So you might get an extra minute from me today, and you might need that extra minute because I really had to write down the subject of this panel because it's too long. Middle Corridor and the 3 Cs initiatives, strategic connectivity in challenging times. I understand the last one, but I made some study of the Trans-Caspian International Transport Route, which is more of a concept than something that exists, I believe, but we get to speak about it. Really happy to have you all here. In order to not to lose time, I won't read your bios, but they're online on the website of the New Strategy Center. And as this is my last panel of the conference, I decided to work the other way around. So I start with the last one on the roster, Miss Malgorzata Samodzietny. Malgo, founder of the Opportunity Institute in Poland and the Institute for the Foreign Affairs Foundation. Floor is yours.
Okay, hello. Sorry. Okay, now it works. Okay, so let me just introduce myself. I'm an academic. I'm also a founder of Opportunity Institute. It's a think tank based in Warsaw. And we focus on 3 Cs initiative and collaboration of the Central Eastern European countries, but also beyond. First of all, I would like to thank you. I would like to thank New Strategy Center and George for inviting me, and it's a great honor to be here and contribute and share my views on 3 Cs initiative, but this is like the scope of my research. So first of all, I would like to give you some insight what 3 Cs initiative is. It's an initiative that gathers 13 states on the north-south axis of Central Eastern European countries, from Baltic Sea to Black Sea, Adriatic, and also Aegean Sea, because in September Greece joined the initiative. So in fact, we have access to, this initiative has an access to northeast Mediterranean, Black Sea, and Baltic Sea. It was established in 2015 by Polish president and Croatian president, and the main spheres of activity of this initiative, it was at that time as a cornerstone was infrastructure, economy, and digitization. But due to recent events, due to COVID-19, due to full-scale invasion on Ukraine, due to problems at the Red Sea, and that affects Suez Canal, we see that the global issues impact also the region of Central Eastern European countries, and our cooperation with our partners should be far beyond. In April, there was a 3 Cs Initiative Summit, and our partnering state became Japan. So as you see, the initiative goes global, and this is one of our goals. Well, first of all, 3 Cs Initiatives needs to change its perception not only among its members but also among its partners. So we have to point out that we are a consumer market that gathers more than 110 million population. We have access to numerous ports in 3 sea basins. We have a lot of ever-expanding railways, roads, ports, airports, and this is our great advantage. So we, on the territory of 3 Cs Initiative, right, you can find multiple transport intersection on north-south axis, but also in east-west connection. So, secondly, we have to also look at the Treaties Initiative as a player in global trade routes. We see that due to our access to seas, due to our railways, due to our roads, and we have that potential. And what's more important, we also, the countries of Central Eastern European countries, we share values, democratic values. We share history, and we share the proper recognition of the threats. As I mentioned, Treaties Initiative was established in 2015. So it was 2 years after Xi Jinping announced Road and Belt Initiative, and 4 years before any EU move was made towards regional connectivity. So you see that the region recognized the threat properly. So for me, I just have to wrap it up because I think my time is getting.
No, you're doing great.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Okay, thank you. You were very strict in that mail. So.
No, I have to say for the public, they're showing a big clock here, but it gives 1 hour. But for my speakers, that's not your hour, that's my hour.
Oh, okay.
No, you're doing fine.
No, thank you. So, finally, we have to see that also Treaties Initiative has a significant role as a balancing tool. We are the countries of Central Eastern Europe, and we want to close the development gap between Western Europe and Eastern Europe. And we see that there is a great potential to do that. But we need support from our partners, and also that gives an opportunity for consolidating transatlantic partnership and transatlantic cooperation. So, in fact, Treaties Initiative is also opportunity to build stronger connection in few spheres, not only that were cornerstones of this initiative, but also beyond. As we see the ports, roads, railways, how they are important due to current situation at the Ukraine. Right? We have very small, in Poland, there was very small airport nearby the border of Ukraine, in Rzeszów, it's called Jesionka. And during recent 2 years, it became one of the most important transportation hub for supplying Ukraine. So you see that Treaties Initiative is not only opportunity, but it's also a win-win situation for the member states and for our partners. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and right on time, even with my intervention. So I've got a question, because it's obvious that the sum of the different parts, 1 and 1, is more than 2. It's 3. But do all your partners, or do all the necessary parties see that the same way? Or do they see each other as competitors?
Well, in some aspect, I'm sure there is some kind of competitiveness, but we have to recognize the project only as a matter, not directly politically, but in economic cooperation in infrastructure. If we build the infrastructure properly, it will all benefit for everyone, for each parties, if we just develop the infrastructure. Because the transportation is the most important thing in building and earning money. So.
And where does the money come from? Governments?
For example, there are 2 huge investments via Baltica and via Carpathia, and they are part of EU funds. So they are funded by EU. Each country, this is one project, but each country apply for funds but by its own and build this part of the road, right, of this transportation route from EU funds.
Great. And our next speaker is the guy who's going to use those roads. Sorin Chinde, Vice President, Transport Division of Grumper Group. Floor is yours.
Thank you for the invitation to this event. I will try to offer you a view of a middle corridor, let's say, from a client, from a user point of view, not necessarily on strategical issues or defense. I have a small presentation. Let's see if it works. Nothing happened.
The presentation of Mr. Schinde.
Is not working. Ah, okay.
It's there.
Yes. So, few words about us. Grampet Group is the largest private railway group in Central and Eastern Europe. We are operating in 10 countries like railway operator. We have 7,500 employees in 18 companies. As a business in 2023, we have it 400 million euros, 31% from Romanian market as market share because in Romania we have the largest operator. As I told you, 7,000 employees, 400 locomotives, 20,000 wagons. Okay. Now, China and Europe are connected through different ways and routes. Of course, the most used is the sea connection, which we have it here through Red Sea. Today is not so used, but it was used many years, so we cannot ignore. And then on land connection, we have connection through Northern Corridor, which are passing Kazakhstan, Russia, or Chinese Russia direct, and Belarus coming to the EU border in Poland. Then we have it middle corridor starting from China to passing Kazakhstan, then Caspian Sea, Azerbaijan, Georgia. One belt is going via Turkey to coming to Istanbul, and then to the, let's say, European Union border. Another belt is going to Mersin port. And of course, we have 3 connections to Constanța. We have those 1 connections to Constanța and to Ukraine. From those 2 main lines, I would say that Ukraine today connections cannot be taken into consideration. The safest one is via Turkey, because it's using just Caspian Sea, and we have just the transportation at the border between Georgia and Turkey, which, okay, during the winter time it's not so good due to the weather conditions, but can be a safe way. What we don't have today, we don't have a good connections across the Black Sea, to Constanța and to Varna, or to Bulgarian ports. Those connections across the Black Sea would give a much shorter access to European Union, to those 2 ports, which, let's say, that are the eastern gates of European Union in Black Sea. But if we look further, we'll see that even if we will have those connections, we need to overcome some infrastructure constraint. And I'm speaking here about mainly on railway transportation, because Middle Corridor, how it was created, it's an association dedicated to promote rail transportation, not necessarily the road. Now there are some discussion to include road transportation. Corridor 4, which is coming from Constanța to Central Europe, today in Romania it's blocked by a lot of railway infrastructure works, and this cannot offer a good quality service for trains and for passenger. In the same time, the route via Turkey, which I told you that is the safest way if we speak about defense, passing Bulgaria and Serbia, is the same affected will be the same affected in the next 3 years by the decision of the Serbian government to modernize and to electrify the line between Bulgarian border, Dimitrovgrad, Tunis. This, it's a project which is supposed to take 3 years and will involve the running of the train only each 3 days. 3 days will run, 3 days will be closed for working. As a conclusion, Middle Corridor can be an alternative to Northern Corridor, can be a safe alternative to the sea route. What cannot deliver Middle Corridor? It's commercial competitiveness. Today, the cost of bringing containers to Middle Corridor is the highest from all three ways. On the Northern Corridor, the container coming from China to Central Europe, it's around 8,000 euros. In Middle Corridor, only bring it to Constanța, it's more than 8,000 euros, and it takes 55 days. On the Northern Corridor transit time, it's only 21 days. And of course, the sea connection, which is the cheapest one, it's less than 5,000 US dollar per 40-foot container, and it's used mainly, of course, by the less high-value goods. Connections between Middle Corridor and the Three Seas initiative, I think that it's very important. Developing the infrastructure project, which are planned in according with Three Seas initiative, connected with Middle Corridor network, will bring all those countries from Transcaucasian area and Central Asia closer to, let's say, safer value, democratic values, and of course, more defendable in case of a crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Soren, what would you say are the main choke points on the Middle Road? The choke points, the difficult points on the route.
Bottlenecks. There is a world study, World Bank issued a study last year. And indeed, the Middle Corridor, the main issues are the ports, due to the fact that there are no direct connections to allow transshipment from wagons to ship. So the containers go down from the wagon to the pier, then from the pier to the ship. A lot of customs issue. This remains a big issue on Middle Corridor, the unification of customs formality. This will be a big win if it will happen. So here it's a lot of work to do. And of course, there is not only, let's say, infrastructural issue that containers are manipulating, the cost for manipulating the container, crossing the Caspian Sea, then manipulating again, put it on the wagon, and of course, cost of the Black Sea, all are very expensive comparing with what the competition offers. Competition, I'm saying, the sea route.
Yeah, Marco, we solved the issue of finance in Europe because EU, Brussels is going to pay it. But who is going to invest in the ports on the Caspian Sea? You don't have to answer that, but it's...
We have to have a guest. I'm sorry. Is it? Yeah, we have to invite a speaker from the region, and he will tell us.
No, but that's the advantage of the sea route, of course, because you mentioned 5,000. But I've heard from some of my friends in the civilian logistic world. At this moment, you can get a container from Shanghai to Europe for 1,500 euros.
Before the Red Sea crisis started, a spot container, so we don't speak about long-term capacity reservation on container ships, a spot container, 40 foot from eastern coast, Shanghai, Ningbo, Shenzhen to Constanța, it was less than 2,400 US dollars. Way back, it's extremely cheap. It's 1,000 or even lower because the traffic is highly debalanced.
Yeah, interesting. Kaush, Mr. Kaush Arha, I'm sure the person with the best hat in this conference, probably also the person with the only hat in this conference, but I really love it. It looks great. Kaush, you're non-resident senior fellow of the Scowcraft Center for Strategy and Security of the Atlantic Council. That's another one I had to read. And please start your contribution to this panel.
Well, thank you, and it's great to be here again. I'll make 3 points, and then perhaps if there's Q&A, we can go deeper into it. One, I think is the centrality of the Black Sea. There is no connection of three seas to Middle Corridor without a free and open Black Sea. So a Black Sea which is free and open is a necessary condition for any discussion that we're having here today. And I think there it's important to note that of the coastal or littoral states in Black Sea, you've got Georgia, you've got Ukraine, Moldova, Romania, and Bulgaria. Their only marine outpost is the Black Sea. Russia and Turkey, the two dominant players, have other options other than Black Sea. My good friend here, all the days from Afghanistan, he may like what I have to say or he may not, but we're good enough friends that we can deal with it. That's an essentiality that it is truly important. Given that, I think Romania in particular, and I'll come to it, but that's the punchline, has an important, neutral, honest broker role in ensuring that not only Black Sea remains free and open, that it becomes a big node of how three seas and the Middle Corridor connect. The future of the Black Sea determines whether it becomes an important linchpin between converging economies of Eastern Europe, Central Asia, West Asia, and in the Indo-Pacific, or it becomes an ulcer of continued sustained conflict. That's one element of it. The second issue, which my good friend Margot just mentioned about the three Cs. Three Cs was an important economic initiative to say, hey, most of the infrastructure in Europe goes east-west. Now you have the most dynamic, fast-growing economies in the Eastern and Central Europe. They can truly transform almost to a percentage or more of GDP if we had substantial, equally good north-south economic corridors along that which would connect these economies, and by so connecting, change not only the system, but be a driver of peace and prosperity. It's a good idea. It didn't have the money to take on really important, ambitious project, which the term itself conveys, which is connecting the three seas, the Baltic, the Adriatic, and the Black. Now, the Baltic and the Adriatic are free and open, relatively. Black Sea is partially so. Somebody said, either you're pregnant or not. The world is about partial pregnancy. It's a good litmus test to say whether you are not. So it's partially free and open. The question is how much it becomes free and open not only affects the Middle Corridor, but also the future of three seas. Now, an important driver that has happened since the announcement of three seas, which is the Ukraine, the Russian annexation and aggression towards Ukraine, and the conflict that drives it, which changed the posture in NATO. Got two new members, and we went to a forward posture to say, hey, we're going to put more forces along the front, but also have the ability to move up and down the front, a security rationale for moving up and down, which is an important complement to the economic rationale of three seas to move up and down. Now is the time to literally look at the strategic ambition and provide it the strategic resources to fulfill this dream, which could be a transformative security and economic driver to Eastern Europe and to the region. And one way to do that may very well be to connect the most dominant, fast-growing port cities in the Baltic, would be Gdansk, the old Danzig, it'd be Constanza here. Gdansk is the fastest-growing port in Europe for last decade. Constanza, you guys know more about than I do. It's a really important and one of the largest capacity ports on the Black Sea. And then obviously you've got Trieste, which is the old Austria-Hungarian sort of access points on the Adriatic. So there's a time now to look at merging sort of the NATO and the three seas rationale, perhaps in an N3 corridors, just to say NATO and three seas, or the three sides of this corridor, I think is a transformative issue not only for peace, prosperity, security. An important element of the Gdansk-Constanza issue is that it ought to go through Western Ukraine, connect Lviv to Bucharest and to Warsaw. Now, any amount of Ukraine reconstruction, Ukraine security, Ukraine accession to EU, Ukraine accession to NATO would not mean much without this sort of a connection and this sort of a commitment that will change this particular world. So that's the time that is ripe for now to look and say, hey, can we merge and move towards N3 corridors? Can we make sure that the Black Sea remains free and open? It is free and open closest to the borders of Odessa, down Romania, Bulgaria to Istanbul. How can we expand that partial free and openness eastward across Black Sea and make sure that this turns into a tremendously important event that we are talking about here? There are a lot of details. We can talk more about it, but thank you for the time, and that's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much. Of course, as a Dutchman, I love to hear people speaking about free and open seas. Mare Liberum. Erasmus thought of that basically because the Dutch wanted to do trade anywhere in the world and not being hindered by anyone. Free and open sea, but maybe also free and open ports. So any thoughts on the reasons why, for instance, Gdansk is growing so fast? Because a lot of Chinese money is being poured into it. Oh, sorry, yeah.
The question is that Chinese money is driving the world economy. I couldn't care less if we drove in any kind of a person in a dance. The question is who controls it, who oversees it, and how is it particularly used and to what purpose? I think that's the important element in the economic stuff. There's history there, but my good friend here, Zoran, showed you the map. It's kind of a squiggly map that was talked about, the bottlenecks on the train connections. So right now you got to go from Bucharest down to Vienna, Budapest before you head north. The question really has to come to be, and again I'm looking at my good friend here from Istanbul, the long distinguished diplomat. The question is that often people feel that having and opening more land routes and sea routes, that somehow they're competitive to each other. They're tremendous complementary forces. So you can see when NAFTA happened in America, it did not decrease our coastal marine traffic. It actually absolutely expanded it substantially. When EU happened through the connection, and it did not in any way diminish Rotterdam, it actually boosted Rotterdam. So having the kind of connection we're talking about, we literally are talking about an order of magnitude jump in the local regional GDP, 1, 2, 3%, if we can get these sort of an infrastructure out there. And I think the question, as you asked earlier, what are the bottlenecks? The bottlenecks are investment and the infrastructure capacity, a chicken and egg thing. So why would I invest until something is free and open? If you make it free and open, if you commit some infrastructure, investment would follow. And I think that's the sort of what we call it, as opposed to a vicious cycle, a virtuous cycle of how these things can go forward. And again, the importance would be have a conceptual framework, rally the troops. Who was David Petraeus gave a good speech, talked about how do you get the big ideas right, get the people to sort of buy into the ideas, lead the idea, and then make sure that what you've got can continue to modulate it. Well, here's the dang idea. It'd be nice to take with it and see where we go with it.
Thank you very much. You're fighting with your microphone.
Yeah, it's just techniques.
Just don't touch any buttons.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. Sabotage. He's sabotaging me. So I would like to make a short disclaimer here. The majority actions of the port of Gdansk has a Polish state. So there is no Chinese money as an owner. So just to be clear here.
Nothing to see here, guys. Just walk on.
No, the shipping, of course, but they don't have. They are not decision making over there. So just to make it clear.
But do we have insight in all the software they use to run their operation?
I hope Apple.
Yeah. We will discuss Apple later, probably also in this forum. Ambassador, is it Tassan or Takan? Tachan. Idem. Shared history we have because you were ambassador to the Netherlands in not the nicest, but the second nicest residence of any ambassador in the Netherlands. The German one is the best, and I would say that the British one is third. And we have a shared history at NATO. But let's not discuss that. Let's discuss the middle road, because Turkey has a key role in that one. And if nobody's going to do it, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it later and mention Montreux, because if we talk open seas, we also have to talk Montreux.
Well, first of all, I'm so pleased to be here in Bucharest. Unfortunately, last year I missed the opportunity to be in the previous iteration of this conference, but I'm a frequenter, so it's always great to be back to this great country. I'm also very pleased that the think tank, EDAM, is partnering with New Strategy Center for this critical panel. I feel humbled in the presence of experts on the subject matter. I could only make my contribution from perhaps the prevailing security environment and how the middle corridor could be perceived from different angles, definitely regional cooperation angle, but also what we more and more see, a strategic competition in international scale. We are talking about Russia, the United States, China, and during the pandemic, during the ongoing war in Ukraine, but also in the evolving crisis in Gaza, we see that connectivity has become critical for supply chains, and these are lifeblood of our economies. Now, when we co-authored a joint report together with New Strategy Center and Sofia Security Forum on Black Sea security a year ago, what we wanted to highlight was that we should deviate from the long-standing approach of taking Black Sea in isolation. I think geographical continuum is necessary, taking into account its connection and relationship with other surrounding geographies from Central Asia, Caspian Sea, Caucasus, and certainly Mediterranean. And I think when we look at the middle corridor, the Trans-Caspian East-West middle corridor, you rightly mentioned the Three Seas initiative to be launched 2 years after the Belt Road Initiative. But even in 2010, my country, Turkey, saw the importance of this connectivity issue. And Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, together with a think tank, TEPAV, developed ideas how to project certain circumstances to make sure that such a connectivity project could be brought to life. And that's why, with the Turkish initiative, in the third summit meeting of Turkic-speaking states, which later on evolved to Organization of Turkic States, in its meeting in Azerbaijan, Gabala, in August of 2013, came up with this idea of middle corridor. Even before Belt and Road Initiative was announced by Xi Jinping in October of that year. And when we look at it, we see that the idea is to bring together different seaports, airports, highways, energy lines, and digital network to be part of a scheme that would not only take care of some of the risks involved, and you refer to the Chinese involvement in different projects that also relate security of Europe, but also to boost regional cooperation among the stakeholders. I refer to the recent report of European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which highlights Middle Corridor to be a promising project. Of course, it requires additional funds to invest insofar as upgrading of certain highways, roads, and installations in Central Asian countries. Nevertheless, when we look at the recent past, I have to be somewhat objectively critical. Our friends in Europe and the United States perhaps didn't take how serious it was, Belt and Road Initiative, after its inception. They were somewhat lukewarm to the idea, and not much thought was given to come up with alternative projects. What we had seen was in 2021, United States to come with its initiative. Then we saw the European Union in the same year with its Gateway initiative. Therefore, I find that Middle Corridor, especially in the prevailing dire circumstances emanating from the ongoing war in Ukraine, the situation in Red Sea because of the crisis in Gaza, to be a viable option. And I think it would be extremely important at this stage to give priority to such an initiative to sort out some of the practical and conceptual difficulties which are faced with, so that this project could be materialized in the foreseeable future. And it will also reinforce the Black Sea security that we are talking about. You refer to Montreux Convention, of course, having a Turkish speaker on any panel, not to touch upon Montreux would be a sinful record on his or her part. Therefore, I have to just highlight one depiction from the report that we co-authored with Bulgarian and Romanian partners. Sometimes Montreux Convention can be perceived as a sort of an obstacle in boosting deterrence and defense of NATO. On the contrary, Montreux Convention is a stability and security multiplier in a very complex geography with its own specificities. I recall some of my colleagues from Europe and the United States coming and having conversation with me as to what would happen in Ukraine. It was prior to the launch of the war by Russia, and whether it would be possible for Turkey not to implement Montreux Convention. And my message to them was that if we condemn what Putin has been doing in this regard of international legal instruments, we would be mimicking what he has been doing. Therefore, we always need to keep Montreux Convention in our mind as one legal instrument that we take advantage of the implementation of its provisions. And Turkey, I must say, has been faithful custodian to implement this instrument. So, in conclusion, my humble message would be for all stakeholders to energize their efforts and eliminate some of the obstacles on the way for the realization of the Middle Corridor. There are other projects, including the 3Cs initiative, and other trilateral, bilateral arrangements and discussions pertaining to Black Sea. My message would be always we should keep inclusivity in our mind, not to have exclusionist tendencies with a view to creating the necessary synergies between different initiatives and projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You mentioned practical and conceptual problems, you call them, I think, challenges, whatever. But shouldn't we especially deal with the practical problems instead of the conceptual ones? Because the conceptual ones, that you can do conferences about them, and I'm happy to come to a conceptual conference about the Middle Road, but it's the practical things we need.
No, I fully agree with you, but sometimes conceptual issues can be some sort of a pretext for not to deal with the practical issues in a serious way. That's why I felt the need to refer to that one as well.
And as we both worked at NATO, I couldn't agree more with you. Last but not least, James Caravana, yeah. Senior Counselor to the President and E.W. Richardson Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Interesting organization, which I hadn't heard from before 3 years until you invited me to a conference in Budapest. My daughter knew because she does American studies, and might I say that the Heritage Foundation stood at the base of a renewal of conservative thinking in the United States? Or is that going too far? But you're not here about that, to talk about that. We can talk about that during drinks. We're talking about 3Cs, Middle Road, and basically free trade. The floor is yours, James.
Yeah, I was a military guy. I think you're the only person that really understands this. When you spend most of your career blowing stuff up, it's really hard to like transition to talking about building things. It just seems wrong, right? But the reason why I'm so enthusiastic about these projects is because I think they have the potential to bring more peace and prosperity than divisions and air wings. And what I would like to hear from the U.S., and actually what I would expect, particularly if there's a future conservative administration, is to talk about a network that the U.S. supports, and it would include the 3Cs initiative, a free and open Black Sea, because it really is the pivot point, as Kosh has articulated so well in so many different formats, the Middle Corridor, and then also the important connection in the Southern Corridor through expanding capacity to move goods and services through the Middle East, because that is the connectivity that brings in Korea, India, Japan, and Taiwan, and not just gives them additional capacity to connect with the West, but it is really the most practical corridor for them to connect with Central Asia. So all these projects together are something where the United States should be the world's biggest champion and supporter. And why is that? And it's the simple reason that the United States is a global power with global interests and global responsibilities. And what makes our life easiest is if the parts of the world that connect the world together, which, if we're honest, really are Western Europe, the greater Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific. And from the US perspective, we'd like access to those part of the world. We'd like them generally to be at peace, right? Not that necessarily everything needs to leave the land in milk and honey, but we'd like people to cooperate across that space. And so the idea of linking free and open spaces together is incredibly attractive to the US. So what do we get out of this? Well, if you think about the three great lily pads of the world, Western Europe, the greater Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific, and if we're honest about what are the three great threats to peace and stability, it is the destabilizing influence of Russia, Iran, and China. I mean, if we're just honest about that, it's true. And what do these projects do? Well, if you think about it, if you link all these free and open spaces together, it really robs them places to meddle and disrupt. That's a benefit to the United States. It adds resiliency and redundancy to global supply chains. That is a huge benefit to the United States. And when we talk about costs of supply chains, what we never we always talk about what's the cheapest venue, and then we always ignore reality, which is the Red Sea is disrupted. There's COVID and other things. And I think if we've taken anything from the last couple of years is to really value the addition of resiliency and redundancy in supply chains. But more importantly, all this stuff that we're leaving on the table, whether you're talking about energy from Central Asia or new sources of rare earths or the potential for new nodes of industrial production and value added, all these things come on the table when you build these networks out. And the last thing I think that the US gets out of this is, I think really, the only reason why we're really having this discussion, I think honestly, is because what we have seen is really kind of the collapse of the post-Soviet space. The collapse of the idea that Russia and other powers can basically have a sphere of influence where they get to decide what people do, and more importantly, they get to decide the routes and paths and network for economic connectivity. And now we've created an opportunity for nations, many of which in a century have never had the opportunity to make their own choices about who they want to connect with, who they want to do business with, what they want to develop in their country. And there's an opportunity for this for small and medium nations to have a choice in their own future. I think that for the United States to support that and help deliver that to our partners is such a great advantage for them, and I think such a benefit for us. So as weirdly as it sounds, I mean, maybe it's not weird, the United States should be the single biggest advocate for that. And we will know when we have success and we have a US president that starts talking about these projects and start talking about them as a constellation of projects that the US is really behind. And that's what I'm really looking for.
Can I add to that?
Of course.
So I think Jim makes a really important point. And the other important sort of elephant in the room is always this comparison to the Belt and Road Initiative. I think there are few important, and often the comparison is apples and oranges. And I think it's really important. It's sort of down. One good thing my good friend from Turkey mentioned, there were a lot of corridors, a lot of engagements which predate the initiation of Belt and Road. So we're not going to list all of them, but there are several of them. The second is, it ain't America just found out Belt and Road. We've been doing it since 1945. It's the Marshall Plan. It's building a Panama Canal. It's you go in Turkey, you go everywhere in West Asia, you will see dams, you'll see ports. All of these were built and turned over. The question is not if China wants to come and build stuff, nothing against it. It's the idea of sort of doing it in an imperialistic colonial way where then you control 10% of this port, 25% of that port, those kind of stuff. And then commercial, and then military follows it. So that's a different. Now, there's been almost this threat to say, hey, what's the European response to Belt and Road? What's the US response to it? And it can't be top down. And it can't be that everything starts from DC and ends in DC. It's got to be bottom up. It's got to be to say, hey, what's the regional aspiration for connectivity? And can we support regional aspirations for connectivity while keeping them free and open? And if we so do, we can all benefit. And let's link those aspects out of some. And can we have a slightly more collective, people, the other words we use a lot nowadays, especially with our good friends in India and others in France, they all talk about multipolarity. Now you can talk about the dang thing, but actual doing it, how do you do multipolarity? By having strong, free and open spaces, and they link among themselves. That's the definition of multipolarity, and the only dang country doing it a lot is us trying to talk about these.
Yeah, but it's interesting that we discuss the connections between us in the West and some nations in the East. You mentioned Iran, you mentioned Russia, you mentioned China. But we also should mention our addiction to oil, Russia, Iran, our addiction to cheap labor. I mean, we both have an iPhone, and we know what that was made. That one was made. So it's nice to talk about strategic independence and reshoring all the stuff we offshore to China. But do we still have that possibility, James?
Well, first of all, the point that I don't want to ever lose the point that Kosh made, which is this is not an alternative to the Belt and Road. Because the Belt and Road is about China building its road, its belts for the benefit of China and connecting China to the world. This is not about that at all. Nobody owns a free and open space. It's the definition of a free and open space. And the Middle Corridor in particular, the Middle Corridor is not about giving China another route to send cars to the West. The Middle Corridor is about connecting these nations in Central Asia and the Caucasus who have great resources, incredibly growing populations and manpower and capacity to bring incredible things to market. They just don't have a way to do that. So these guys own this. And the answer to your problem is, you know what? We should be addicted to cheap energy. Because reliable, affordable, dependable energy is the greatest driver of human prosperity. And it's the greatest, most powerful tool for dealing with things like climate change and environmental issues. And the question is there's so much energy out there, and the reason why we're not bringing it to the market is because we don't have networks.
I'm sure they heard you speak yesterday.
No, and we have enormous labor opportunities. And the thing is populations don't have to move to places to provide labor. People have a prosperity and wealth in their own countries if they have a way to connect with the world. And India is the greatest example. India has a massive population, massive growth. They're not going to leave India in the end. And the reason for that is the Indian government is going to create growth and prosperity by growing jobs. And one of the ways they're going to do that is not just on their internal market, but is in their connectivity to the rest of the world. One of the biggest beneficiaries of this project is going to be India. And one of the greatest beneficiaries of this project are going to be people that want to do business with India because it's going to make it easier to connect with them.
I'll ask George. Yeah, I saw you grab the microphone. No, not really. But migration is also an interesting subject for one of the next panels on this conference. Ambassador.
No, just to complement what you have said, you are absolutely right. We shouldn't perhaps focus too much on whether any project would be an alternative to Belt and Road Initiative. It's there. And those who have been involved in Turkey with the Middle Corridor project lately have seen their European and American colleagues focusing on those issues that were contemplated earlier, such as decoupling, de-risking, And I think it is with a view to countering some of the malign influences that we may think about, and we referred to that earlier in our conversation.
Yeah, I mentioned it in another. When was it? I think on Wednesday. I'm a big Schumann fan and 9th of May fan because he did two things in one. With his coal and steel agreement in Europe, he connected economies, but he also made sure that the means to conduct a new war were also governed together. And that basically also comes back to what Kau said. Once you have trade, once you have free trade, once you have the interaction between nations, then everybody profits. So that was my EU short commercial message. Margot, you were taking your... Yeah, so it's a sign.
Not
People
again.
taking their microphone.
Does it work? Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to add one thing. Each year during the Three Seas Initiative Summit, on a presidential level, we have simultaneously a Three Seas Initiative Economic Forum. Each forum gathers more than 1,000 businessmen, more than 1,000 people who are into the business and they're interested in the local cooperation beyond their own country. So there is a huge potential from bottom to up, but we need a little bit more of support of our partners and political elites.
And what support? Because you mentioned
Political
bottom up
support.
before. Was
Just, it's most of it is making the law easier to cooperate among the initiative, among the neighboring states, because we're basically focusing on international law or EU directives, but we need some kind of make it more easier to invest in our neighboring state, from Poland to Czech to Slovakia to Lithuania to Latvia. That would make this more prosperous even for the regional countries.
Yeah, kill all bureaucrats, I would say. But I was a Milmob guy. We've got time for questions. Who would like to pose a question? Over there, please state your name and your affiliation. No, you're not touching my microphone.
I live with your microphone. Hans. Jean Valvis, I'm from the food industry. I spoke yesterday about food security. I'm not a military guy. I'm not a security guy. And my question is very conceptual here. Because I saw the presentation of Arha, Kaush Arha, and I saw a map. And this map was a triangle. And we are in a subject here, I don't know if you are out of your subject, Hans, that speak about Balkans Security Forum. And if we can see the map of Rauch, the Balkans is out of the triangle of the 3C initiatives. Why the concept, and if you take everything, say, Arha and James, everything you said, voila, thank you very much to the logistics. Everything you say, I take a notion, north-south, security and transport.
Couch, was that by design?
So,
This
my
triangle
question,
or...
I will be more precise. Why this concept of 3 Cs and not another one which was 4 Cs, which include Aegean Sea, which have Piraeus as a port, which is a main port, which include Balkans, okay? And please inform the people which is not in the security area why this concept of 3 Cs with Trieste, which is a very safe Central Europe port, and not Piraeus.
Greece is now a member of the 3 Cs initiative. Am I right?
Yeah.
And
Since
actually, we
September.
joined recently.
Yeah.
I am a marketing guy. Why we don't call it 4 Cs?
Okay.
Because agency, it is Greece and include Balkans. And it's the subject of this meeting.
I was at the Three Seas conference. Yeah, you get the next one. And you may answer.
During my
but I was at the Three Seas conference. When Greece joined. So.
Yeah.
But lots of.
It's
Hey,
a question, why it is 3 seas?
This conference
As
is
I mentioned during my
is starting to get lively. Great.
Yeah, may
Kous,
I?
was that intentionally that you had this triangle, or was this just to illustrate 3 seas?
I'm slightly confused.
Kous can't count above 3. That's the right, 'cause that's the truth.
I think that's the short answer. I really appreciate your question. And I think the answer lies in what Jim said. It's not I who made the 3 Cs. It is the 12 countries that came and named it
13.
12 countries. Now
Greece.
they're 13. Now they'll be 14. Hopefully they'll be 16. So hopefully by that time, I don't say 13 or 14. 12 countries came and said 3 Cs. I hope, some like you, the right point of this discussion is for you to come up and say, hey, why are we left out of it? And absolutely join, just like Greece did. And that's exactly what they did. Other folks say, no, hold on a minute, let me finish now. You can ask a lot of questions, got to answer that. And so the second part is, what about Caspian? If I had that discussion with my friend, just like they talked about here, they'll be jumping up. They do a lot of food stuff, lovely food stuff from Ayatpur to Turkmenbashi. They will say exactly what you're saying. That is precisely the point what Jim was trying to make. It ain't me. It's you who define if it's 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. The point being, we ought to keep them free and open. The idea of triangle is just taken. I think the triangle would look a lot better if Piraeus was there and there was a quadrilateral as opposed to triangle. Idea is keep them free and open. Free and open countries decide what free and open associations are. Our job is to support it.
Margot?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that at the beginning, when the Three Seas Initiative was established, is focused on states that are members of EU. So, as you see, the Western Balkans are at that matter excluded a little bit, right? So,
And Italy is not a member of the Three Seas.
No, and I know the biggest enemy of a good idea is a better idea. And if we keep on talking here, we're going to have the North Sea also in the initiative, which probably wouldn't be a good idea.
If I may, that's why I insisted on the word inclusivity. I mean, okay, European Union initiative, I respect that. And countries like my country is not a member, but it should not be an obstacle to have connectivity of networks of connectivity.
Right. I mean, I think that's exactly right. And I think that is, I mean, if you actually read the stuff we've been writing, and one of the things that Kous and I run is this thing called the Sinai Dialogue, because our first meeting was in Sinai, which really talks about what are the potential to create free and open spaces. So I don't think anybody disagrees with you that it would be great if that the Balkans could move forward in history and become integrated into these open networks. That would be awesome. We should start talking about connectivity to include the Caspian. And what we haven't talked about is this all also connects into the Mediterranean. And that sits on the cap of the fastest growing population on the planet Earth, which is Africa. And if we don't work with like-minded nations in Africa to build their prosperity and stability and security, then we're going to spend a lot of the future decades dealing with all the problems that come out of that. And if we build all these things out, what do you have? Well, with the southern corridor through the greater Middle East, you really open the potential for East Africa to have new opportunities to integrate. With all that connectivity, you have potential to go jump across the Mediterranean to work with North Africa. And then there's also potential of West Africa. And again, you're bringing more energy to the table. You're bringing more populations to the table that can manufacture and grow and buy without having to leave their homes. And so I think that is the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to link all the free and open spaces together. And if we're just being honest, to look at countries whose notion is to say, I don't like the idea of free and open, and saying, you are in the minority, and if you don't want to participate in that, great. But the rest of history is not going to stop and wait for you.
James, thanks. We've got 5 minutes left and three questions.
Simeon Tsomokos from the Delphi Economic Forum. Greece is delighted to participate in the Three Seas initiative. We're very happy that this may be connected with the IMEC, the India, Middle East, Europe, Pacific. Actually, the Greek Prime Minister was in India last February. The issue dominated the discussions at the Raisina conference. We're having a discussion in Thessaloniki, which we don't have only the port of Piraeus, but it's also the port of Thessaloniki that may play a leading role. My question is a little naive perhaps, but let me do it. There are a few countries which participate in both of the Belt and Road, like Saudi Arabia, like United Arab Emirates. Is this good? Is this bad? I mean, what is your assessment about this?
A question for who?
For maybe Klaus, maybe Jim.
Koos?
Let Jim ask first.
No. One of you gets to answer, not both of you.
Okay, I think the answer is really as to what does that mean of participation. You cannot say we're doing global economy and we gotta keep a big economy out of it. You do say to keep the free and open part of it. Any economy that detracts from that and has either sort of dual purpose intentions or controlling intentions or coercive intentions, then they are got no place in free and open areas.
Thank you very much. Next question, please.
Ambassador Basat Öztürk from Turkey. I would like to see a free and open European Union. Because in its present format, this is exclusive, yet another exclusive EU project, as it stands. So you may add Piraeus or 5, 6, 10 more ports from European Union countries. It's going to be an internal and isolated project. You want to get connected to Eurasia, to the Southern Caucasus, to Central Asia, like it or not. You just can't exclude Turkey because it's the landmass connecting Europe to Asia. If you have been to Istanbul, you will see that it's connecting or disconnecting two continents of Europe and Asia. And it's not a coincidence that Istanbul has been the busiest airport in Europe, including all European Union countries, for so long. It's not a coincidence. It's going to be the same for ports, for land roads, and for everything. So I'm suggesting that
I'm happy that there's no question
free and
there.
open
That's
European
no question
before
there.
asking for any other free and open
No,
spaces.
but and I'm an Istanbul fan, one of the nicest cities in the world, with, by the way, one of the nicest consulates in Turkey, Dutch one.
Well, I think to complement what Ambassador Öztürk has said, perhaps we can take gateway initiative of the European Union to have its open-minded approach, contrary to restrictive approaches of the past. So it should be built on this understanding in the future.
If I listen well to Malgo, you should make sure that your railroads in Turkey are so good and so efficient and so fast that nobody wants to use anything else than your railroads. So that's your task then, which I give on a Friday afternoon. Oh, you got a microphone already.
I'm Yulia Klemenko. I'm a member of Ukrainian Parliament, and I'm vice chair of Infrastructure and Transport Committee. So I'm very practical about infrastructure. My question is actually, how do you see Ukrainian involvement? Because in this nice triangle, we are the part of the 3C, but we are not a member of the European Union. You said only for European Union countries you are you allowed to invest. So. How do you see our involvement? And also my side remark that this is not about the legislation which is not allowed to build such a big project. It's about most and probably money, because this project demands a lot of money and a lot of coordination. You cannot do road in Poland and didn't prolong it in Ukraine, for example, or the same with railways and ports. So how do you see our involvement, and where is the money for this project? Thank you.
Malgo, maybe?
Well, it's hard to me to comment anything at that issue, because currently there are some kind of talks between Ukrainian and Polish government due to railways and the broad of these railways, right? So this is also not only the matter of common building of roads, but also we've got these issues due to railways. So due to funds that will be implemented into that project, most of Polish investments were based on EU funds. So that's why I'm not 3Cs Initiative, right? So that's why we gathered EU member states, because it was easy for us to implement the project of infrastructural connectivity. So due to Ukraine, it's absolutely critical to join Ukraine into this infrastructure. And in my opinion, it's probably happened just after the ceasefire and end of the war.
Thank you very much. I'm over time already, so I'll have a problem with George. For each one of you, one last sentence, one last remark you want to make. James?
Yeah, look, I think the U.S. position should be that using 3Cs projects as part of Ukrainian reconstruction ought to be a priority.
And then we'll get world peace, by the way. Yeah, you're right. You're totally right. Sure.
Well, as I said, to give priority to resolve some of the practical and conceptual issues, and to keep inclusivity as a motto for future endeavors. Thank you.
We'll go.
Cooperation bottom up and up to down.
Sorin?
I think that the main conclusion should be, when we think to develop infrastructure projects which are meant to connect countries, economies, populations, we should avoid to create exclusivity clubs. Only members from this area can be, or only from if you are EU member or other things.
Coach? I agree. He agrees. Great. Thank you very much for being here. And please join me in an applause for this great panel. And it's luncheon time now, so time to network.